He laughed at her dreams, never realizing she was already building one without him. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds, spilling across a messy kitchen counter lined with half-drunk coffee cups and unopened bills. Elena Carter stood barefoot in front of the stove, absent-mindedly stirring oatmeal that had long gone cold. Her laptop sat open on the counter beside her, its cracked screen frozen on a business proposal she'd been rewriting for weeks. The title blinked at her like an accusation. Proposal for funding. Carter Home Consulting. She sighed, typing, deleting, retyping, then deleting again. Behind her, Ryan's voice boomed from the hallway. "You still working on that thing?" She didn't turn around. "It's not a thing, Ryan. It's a business plan." He walked in, crisp white shirt tucked perfectly, smelling of expensive cologne and success. He grabbed his tie from the chair, glanced at her screen, and smirked. "Business plan, huh? You've been writing that for 3 months. You planning to sell the oatmeal?" Her lips tightened, but she didn't bite. She'd learned that silence was safer than arguing. Ryan checked his reflection in the window, adjusting his tie. "You know, if you put half this effort into finding a real job, maybe you wouldn't need to play pretend CEO in pajamas." Her hand froze over the stove. "It's not pretend." "Sure," he said, snatching his coffee, "and I'm the next Elon Musk." He walked out laughing, leaving her staring at the oatmeal, thick, bland, and burned at the bottom. By noon, she sat at her desk, the same spot she used for everything. Work, bills, grocery lists, broken dreams. The rejection email popped up just as she took a breath. "We regret to inform you." Her fingers went numb. Another investor turned her down. The 12th one. The clock ticked loud in the quiet apartment. Ryan texted, "Running late, dinner with the guys from work, don't wait up." No kiss emoji, no heart, not even her name. She stared at the message for a full minute, then turned her phone face down. That evening, the apartment felt like a museum of someone else's life, polished, cold, untouched. She poured herself a glass of cheap red wine and opened her laptop again, forcing herself to keep typing. Her reflection on the dark screen looked older than 32. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the quiet way a heart cracks when mocked too many times. She clicked save, then closed it. The door opened behind her. Ryan's laughter filled the apartment. "Babe, you won't believe the story my boss told tonight." Elena turned. He looked flushed from wine and approval. His voice was loud, his confidence louder. She smiled weakly. "You smell like success." "Better than smelling like oatmeal," he said, tossing his keys onto the counter. The joke was small, harmless even, but it cut like paper. She laughed anyway because fighting only gave him more power. He walked past her, already scrolling through his phone. "Oh, by the way, I told them you're still, what's that word? Exploring opportunities?" Got a few laughs out of that. Her chest tightened. "You talked about me?" "Relax, it was just a joke." She forced a smile. "Right, just a joke." The next evening, Ryan hosted a dinner party. 6 of his colleagues, all sharp suits and sharper wives. Elena dressed carefully, white blouse, soft curls, subtle lipstick, trying to look like she belonged. Ryan wanted perfect presentation, Elena wanted peace. The night was all wine and work talk, her contributions small, polite, invisible. Until someone asked, "So, Elena, what do you do these days?" Ryan answered before she could speak. "Oh, she's an entrepreneur," he said with mocked pride. "Runs a very exclusive business, mostly consulting her laptop from the couch." Laughter rippled around the table. Elena's throat closed. Her fingers dug into the napkin on her lap. She smiled. Practiced, calm. "Must be nice," one of the wives added. "I'd love to have that kind of freedom." Ryan poured himself another drink. "Freedom's just another word for unemployed with Wi-Fi." The table erupted in laughter again. Elena blinked, the sound echoing in her skull like thunder. For a moment the world slowed. Her heartbeat, the clinking glasses, the way Ryan looked at her like she was part of the joke, instead of the woman who built his world. She wanted to stand, to scream, to throw the wine in his face. But she smiled. A perfect, unbreakable smile. Later that night, when the guests were gone and the dishwasher hummed, Ryan came up behind her, wrapping his arms lazily around her waist. "Don't be mad," he murmured. You know I was kidding. She stayed still. Do you? He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, she said softly. Just go to bed. I'll clean up. He shrugged, kissed her cheek, and walked off, humming. When his footsteps faded, Elena exhaled for the first time in hours. Her eyes stung, her chest ached, but her face remained calm. She turned off the lights, sat at the table they'd shared laughter on, and whispered into the empty room, "Never again." That night, while he slept peacefully, she sat in the glow of her laptop searching. How to start a business with no money. How to open a bank account secretly. How to build a company without your husband knowing. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes didn't. Each search result was a match striking in the dark. By 3 a.m., she'd filled a notepad with names, numbers, ideas. By 4 a.m., she'd found her first mentor. By 5 a.m., the sun began to rise, and for the first time in years, Elena smiled. Days turned into weeks. She woke up early, made Ryan's breakfast, packed his lunch, the picture of a perfect wife. But the moment he left, she became someone else. Her laptop opened, her notebook spread across the kitchen table. The coffee pot became her clock. She worked, learned, reached out to people online who didn't laugh at her ideas. A woman in Austin taught her about small business loans. A mentor in Chicago showed her how to register an LLC. Every night when Ryan came home, she closed her laptop, hiding her empire under a smile. One evening, Ryan complained again. "They're restructuring at work. My boss says we need to prove our worth. Can you believe that?" Elena looked up from her notes. "Prove your worth?" He nodded, frustrated. "Yeah, I've been with the company 5 years. I basically run half the department. They should be grateful." She tilted her head, studying him. "Maybe they're looking for new ideas." He scoffed. "Ideas are for dreamers. Stability is for winners." She smiled faintly. "We'll see." He missed the tone. He always did. That night, he fell asleep on the couch, half a beer still in his hand. Elena sat beside him quietly, staring at the man she once loved, the man who forgot she was more than his reflection. The TV flickered in front of them, showing a commercial for a tech startup raising millions. She whispered, "They laughed once too." Ryan stirred. "You say something?" She smiled softly. "Just good night." When he finally went to bed, Elena opened her laptop again, the glow of the screen lighting her face like a secret fire. She registered a new name that night. E. Brooks Consulting. Not Elena Carter, not Ryan's wife, just her. And with one click, the woman he mocked for being broke became someone else entirely, the woman who would one day own him. That night, while he slept peacefully, she started her empire.
He thought she was losing interest. She was just losing patience. The night Ryan mocked her dreams, something inside Elena Carter finally cracked, but not in the way he expected. He thought she'd sulk, cry, beg. She didn't. She washed the dishes in silence, the hum of the dishwasher drowning out her thoughts, or maybe feeding them. Each clink of the plates felt like punctuation to the vow echoing inside her mind. Never again. That night, as Ryan snored in the next room, she sat at her small desk, the one he called her craft corner. Her laptop flickered on. A blank screen. A fresh start. She deleted Elena Carter from every login and typed a new name. Elena Brooks. Her maiden name. The name before marriage, before mockery, before she became invisible in her own home. It felt like reclaiming oxygen. She didn't know what she was building yet, only that it would be hers. The night he laughed at her, she stopped being his punchline. The next morning, Ryan kissed her on the forehead before leaving for work, unaware that while he joked about her Wi-Fi hobbies, she had already bought her first domain name. The name? workweave.ai, an idea she'd scribbled months ago while applying for jobs that never called back. What if small companies could hire talent without the bias of resumes, just through data-driven matching? Back then, it sounded too big, too technical, too expensive. But now, fueled by quiet rage and rediscovered self-worth, it sounded possible. She poured herself a cup of coffee and started watching tutorials, data science, AI basics, user experience. Each video became her rebellion, each notebook page her armor. By the time Ryan returned home that night, she had already mapped her first wireframe on paper. He thought she was scrolling recipes. She was designing algorithms. Days turned into weeks. Elena's routine changed subtly. She began waking earlier, sleeping later. When Ryan complained that she seemed distant, she smiled and said she was just tired. The truth? She was working double shifts. One as his wife, one as her future. She'd sit on the balcony at 2 a.m., eyes heavy, laptop light reflecting against her face, whispering lines of code under her breath like prayers. If I can make this prototype run, I can pitch it. I just need one investor. One yes. She opened a secret bank account, using her maiden name, of course, and began saving every bit she could. Freelance writing, small gigs, affiliate projects, every rupee, every dollar mattered. Meanwhile, Ryan's arrogance grew. He got a promotion at his tech firm, started dressing sharper, coming home later. His phone buzzed constantly, messages he always read with a smirk and a just work stuff excuse. She never asked. She no longer cared. Her silence unnerved him, though he mistook it for weakness. He thought silence meant surrender, but silence was her strategy. Months passed, and workweave.ai began to take shape. Her prototype worked, not perfectly, but enough to show promise. She joined online entrepreneur groups under her alias, Elena Brooks. There, she met Ava Nguyen, a successful business mentor who had scaled 2 startups in Silicon Valley. Ava saw potential in Elena, raw, unpolished, but brilliant. You've got something, Elena, but you need funding, traction, and a story that sells. Elena smiled faintly. Oh, I have a story. She didn't say that the villain of it slept 10 feet away every night. They worked in secret. Zoom calls during lunch breaks, Slack messages hidden behind spreadsheets. Ava helped her refine her pitch, connect with a few angel investors, and join a women in tech accelerator, all under the name Elena Brooks. While he bragged about office deals, she was negotiating her own destiny. Ryan began noticing changes. She dressed better, spoke sharper, her confidence started to return. One evening he asked, "What's gotten into you? You've been smiling at your laptop lately." Elena looked up, her tone calm, but edged with quiet pride. "Maybe I just remembered I'm not as useless as you think." He laughed it off. "Relax, babe. Just saying, don't waste time on these little projects. Focus on something real." She nodded. Inside she thought, you wouldn't recognize real if you doubled your salary. Mini-hook 5. He thought he was keeping her small, not realizing she'd outgrown his shadow. Every insult became her fuel. He called her a dreamer. She learned project management. He said, tech isn't for people like you. She completed an AI certification. He mocked her savings account. She closed her first client deal, $8,000 for an early version of her software. That night, she made dinner, humming to herself. Ryan barely looked up from his phone. "You're in a good mood," he muttered. "Just a productive day," she replied. If only he knew. He counted his bonuses. She counted her milestones. Weeks later, Elena stood in her home office, a space that once felt like a prison, now transformed into her command center. Whiteboard full of plans, emails from potential partners, a call scheduled with an investor from London. She was scared, but not a feeling anymore. She was scared of being found out too early. Because the closer she got to success, the more dangerous his mockery became. He'd start arguments for no reason, criticize her cooking, compare her to real women who support their men. She smiled through it all, calm, unshaken. He didn't know that the next phase of her plan would require something more daring, hiring people under NDA, renting an office, and preparing for a public launch. Her mentor, Ava, sent her a voice note that night. "When the world sees you, make sure you're ready to own it." Elena whispered back to herself, "I've been ready since the night he laughed." He thought she was fading. She was just perfecting her glow. By now, Ryan had started suspecting something. She wasn't fighting anymore. She wasn't begging for attention. She was peaceful. And peace, in his mind, always meant she was hiding something. He snooped through her messages, found nothing, checked her browsing history, all cleaned. She even changed her phone password. One night he confronted her. "Are you seeing someone?" Elena blinked, feigning confusion. "Someone? Ryan, please, I barely see sunlight." He stared at her, searching for guilt, finding only calm confidence. Then he shook his head and muttered, "Whatever, you'd never cheat on me anyway." Elena smiled faintly. "You're right, I'd never waste that kind of time." He thought he'd never betray him, not realizing betrayal was already beneath his roof. The day came when she received her official incorporation papers. Workweave Technologies Limited, founder, Elena Brooks. She printed the certificate, held it in her hands, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. Tears welled up, not from sadness, but from the joy of proving to herself that she could. That night, while Ryan watched sports in the living room, Elena sat by the window, sipping wine, her laptop open on her lap. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. Quietly, steadily, powerfully. When Ryan called out, "Hey, can you grab me another beer?" She looked at him for a moment, then calmly replied, "Get it yourself." It was a small rebellion, but in her heart it felt like a revolution. He thought he ruled her world, not realizing she'd built her own universe. By now she had 12 employees, 4 clients, and an investor offer on the table. Every morning she kissed him goodbye like nothing had changed and drove off to her friend's house. In truth, she was driving to her office downtown. Her empire was growing behind the mask of domesticity. Ryan never suspected a thing. He was too busy climbing his corporate ladder, unaware that the very company he worked for would soon be standing across from Workweave.ai in a high-stakes acquisition meeting. But that twist was for another day. Tonight, Elena looked out at the city lights, her reflection merging with the skyline. Her phone buzzed. Ava again. "Congrats, Elena, you're officially in the big leagues. Investors love your pitch. Next step, corporate partnerships." Elena smiled. "Perfect. I already know where to start."
He was fighting a ghost, and the ghost had his wife's smile. Mornings came with the same routine. Ryan leaving in his sharp navy suit, tossing casual arrogance over his shoulder like a scent that lingered long after he'd gone. But now, when the door closed, Elena's world came alive. No longer hiding behind dim screens or whispered plans, she had an office, a team, and power that pulsed in silence. Nexora. That was the new name, a sleek rebrand her mentor Ava had suggested. "Workweave sounds small. Nexora sounds inevitable," Ava said. Elena had smiled. "Then inevitable it is." And inevitable it became. Within 6 months, Nexora had secured a $3.2 million seed round from investors across Europe. The platform's algorithm, her brainchild, was being called the future of unbiased hiring. Tech magazines began whispering about the mysterious founder who refused interviews, appearing only through press statements signed by E. Brooks, CEO, Nexora Technologies. Ryan, meanwhile, ranted about it nightly. He bragged about his market dominance, not realizing she was the storm forming under his feet. He'd come home from work, drop his briefcase, pour a drink, and start his ritual complaint. "This Nexora company? Total amateurs. They're undercutting our bids, offering impossible solutions. Some rookie startup, probably run by kids." Elena would stir the soup, hiding a smirk. "Maybe they're just smarter than your team." He snorted. "Please, they'll burn out. No one competes with Titan Edge." Titan Edge, his pride. The tech firm he worshipped like a religion. The same firm now bleeding contracts, losing clients to Nexora week after week. At night, Elena read Titan Edge's press statements, watching their panic bloom through formal language. "We are restructuring to meet competitive market trends." Translation, "We're losing to someone we can't see." She sipped her tea and whispered, "Boo." He was chasing ghosts in the market, unaware the ghost lived in his home. Her empire grew silently. Nexora moved into a glass building downtown, minimalist design, soft lighting, her initials hidden everywhere, the subtle E in the logo curve, the B in the internal code. Her employees respected her anonymity. They didn't know her real name, only her work ethic. To them, she was a visionary founder who valued privacy. To her, it was the sweetest revenge, to stand invisible yet unstoppable. She often walked through the Nexora office disguised as a consultant, watching her people brainstorm in glass rooms. No one looked twice at her, and that was perfect. In a world obsessed with fame, she found power in invisibility. At home, Ryan's frustration grew. "You know what's insane?" he said one evening, pacing the living room. "Nexora just landed our biggest client, Global Works. The CEO sent a smug statement about reshaping the future. What reshaping? They're parasites." Elena looked up from her laptop. "Maybe they're just smarter than your team." He snorted. "Please, they'll burn out. No one competes with Titan Edge." Titan Edge, his pride. The tech firm he worshipped like religion. The same firm now bleeding contracts, losing clients to Nexora week after week. At night, Elena read Titan Edge's press statements, watching their panic bloom through formal language. "We are restructuring to meet competitive market trends." Translation: "We're losing to someone we can't see." She sipped her tea and whispered, "Boo." He was chasing ghosts in the market, unaware the ghost lived in his home. Her empire grew silently. Nexora moved into a glass building downtown, minimalist design, soft lighting, her initials hidden everywhere, the subtle E in the logo curve, the B in the internal code. Her employees respected her anonymity. They didn't know her real name, only her work ethic. To them, she was a visionary founder who valued privacy. To her, it was the sweetest revenge, to stand invisible yet unstoppable. She often walked through the Nexora office disguised as a consultant, watching her people brainstorm in glass rooms. No one looked twice at her, and that was perfect. In a world obsessed with fame, she found power in invisibility. At home, Ryan's frustration grew. "You know what's insane?" he said one evening, pacing the living room. "Nexora just landed our biggest client, Global Works. The CEO sent a smug statement about reshaping the future." "What reshaping? They're parasites." Elena looked up from her laptop. "Maybe they're just smarter than your team." He snorted. "Please, they'll burn out. No one competes with Titan Edge." Titan Edge, his pride. The tech firm he worshipped like a religion. The same firm now bleeding contracts, losing clients to Nexora week after week. At night, Elena read Titan Edge's press statements, watching their panic bloom through formal language. "We are restructuring to meet competitive market trends." Translation: "We're losing to someone we can't see." She sipped her tea and whispered, "Boo." He was chasing ghosts in the market, unaware the ghost lived in his home. Every trade brought her closer to poetic justice, the kind that doesn't scream, but whispers in financial reports. He was losing control of his empire, one trade at a time. At home, cracks deepened. Ryan grew suspicious again. "You've been so calm lately. What are you hiding?" "I'm hiding peace," she said simply. "Yeah, right. Peace doesn't exist when your husband's losing millions." "Maybe it does," she said softly, "when it's your husband's arrogance paying the bill." He stared, confused, something in her tone unnerving him. But she smiled sweetly, kissed his cheek, and walked away. He never noticed her laptop screen behind her, open to Nexora's financial dashboard, glowing with green numbers. He thought he was distant, not realizing she was already out of reach. 2 months later, the inevitable happened. Titan Edge called an emergency meeting. Their biggest investor had shifted funds into Nexora. Ryan came home in belief. "Can you believe this? Someone's buying us piece by piece. It's like they're bleeding us slowly. The board is terrified." Elena poured him a drink. "Maybe you should adapt." "Adapt? No, I'll destroy whoever's behind this. Mark my words, I'll expose them." She smiled faintly, hiding the flicker of thrill behind her calm expression. "Be careful, Ryan. Sometimes when you look for monsters, you find mirrors." He frowned, puzzled, and walked away muttering about strategy and revenge. Elena looked out the window again, whispering to herself, "Keep looking, darling. You're getting warmer."
The city had changed, or maybe it was just Ryan who had. The glass towers that once reflected his ambition now mirrored his downfall. Every morning, he still wore the same designer suits, the same perfect tie knot, the same cologne that once made Elena turn her head. But inside, he was a man hollowed out, a relic dressed in old pride. Ryan's company, Rexford Holdings, had been bleeding money for months. Poor investments, one bad merger, and a scandal that wiped away investor confidence. The board was panicking. Meetings stretched late into the night, and Ryan's voice, once commanding, now trembled behind a mask of forced optimism. "Gentlemen," he said one morning, standing at the head of the mahogany table, "we just need another quarter. The rebound is close." But the men around him, men who once laughed at his jokes and echoed his arrogance, exchanged empty glances. They had already stopped believing. When the email arrived that afternoon, his assistant hovered at his door, pale-faced. "Sir, there's an acquisition offer. Full buyout. They want to take control." Ryan froze mid-sentence. "Who?" They didn't reveal the parent name, just the Echelon Group. He leaned back, smirk faltering. "Tell them Rexford Holdings isn't for sale." "Sir, with respect, the board already voted to consider it." Something twisted in his chest. For the first time in years, Ryan felt powerless. Across the city, in a minimalist glass office overlooking the skyline, Elena Brooks was finalizing signatures. Her assistant slid the final document across the desk. "Congratulations, ma'am. The acquisition of Rexford Holdings is officially complete." Elena paused, pen hovering over the paper. For a brief second, her reflection looked back at her in the glass. Not the woman who once wept in that penthouse, not the one who begged for love that had already died. This Elena was sculpted from fire and silence. She signed. The ink bled slightly across the line, like closure finally taking form. Her assistant smiled. "The board meeting is set for tomorrow morning at 10. You'll be announced as the new CEO." Elena simply nodded, her tone steady. "Make sure the press isn't notified yet. I want to see their faces before the world does." Ryan didn't sleep that night. He sat by his desk, whiskey glass untouched, staring at old photographs that had somehow survived the years. Him and Elena at their anniversary dinner, her laughter caught in mid-frame. Back then, she had worn a simple white dress. He remembered mocking her choice for being too modest for the occasion. Now, looking at that photo, he couldn't remember why he thought belittling her made him powerful. His phone buzzed, another message from his financial director. "Tomorrow's meeting, mandatory attendance. The new ownership will be announced." Ryan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Who the hell are they? He didn't know. And that was exactly how Elena wanted it. Morning came like judgment. The boardroom was already filled when Ryan entered, rows of polished faces trying to look composed, but every whisper told a different story. He adjusted his tie, forcing a confident stride. "Let's get this over with." At the head of the table, the chairman cleared his throat. "As you all know, Rexford Holdings has officially been acquired. The new leadership will be joining us today to outline the transition." The door opened. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Echoing against marble floors like the ticking of a clock he couldn't rewind. He didn't look up at first until he heard a voice that stopped the air in the room. "Good morning, gentlemen." The pen in his hand slipped. He looked up, and time folded in on itself. Elena. Her hair was pinned neatly, her posture calm, her tailored black suit a quiet weapon. She smiled, polite, restrained, devastating. "Thank you for welcoming me," she said evenly. "I'm Elena Brooks, the new CEO of Rexford Holdings." The room went dead silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to stop humming. Ryan's jaw tightened. He blinked as if trying to make the image dissolve, but it didn't. It was her, the woman he dismissed, the one he once told would never make it without him. Now she stood before him, composed, radiant, untouchable. He used to sign her allowance. Now she signs his paycheck. Ryan swallowed hard. forcing a hollow chuckle. Is this some kind of joke? Elena met his gaze, voice soft but sharp. Does it look like one? The chairman cleared his throat nervously. Miss Brooks represents the new majority ownership under Echelon Group. Effective immediately, all executive operations will transition under her leadership. Ryan's fingers gripped the table. You can't do this. This is my company. Elena stepped closer, her tone almost kind. Almost. Oh, I remember that tone. The one you used the night you told me I'd always depend on you. I suppose the universe disagreed. The board exchanged uneasy glances, pretending to study their notes. Ryan stared at her, his voice cracking. You planned this. I built this, she corrected softly. Every sleepless night, every deal, every connection, I earned it. You just never thought I could. For a long moment, no one moved. The board members sat frozen in their leather chairs, glancing between Ryan's tight jaw and Elena's calm expression. The silence wasn't awkward. It was absolute. It felt like justice finally given a microphone. Elena set her folder on the table. Let's begin. Her voice was the same, gentle, deliberate, but now it carried weight. Every syllable reminded Ryan of the nights he ignored her, the dinners he left halfway through, the dreams he'd mocked before they could bloom. She flipped through her notes. First, I want to address the restructuring plan. The company has been in decline due to questionable leadership and outdated strategies. Ryan flinched. She didn't look at him, not yet, but the board did. One of the directors, Mr. Handley, cleared his throat. Miss Brooks, are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting, I'm confirming. Effective immediately, there will be a review of all executive positions, starting with the CEO's office. Her words were precise, surgical. Ryan's chair creaked. You can't just walk in here and... Elena, please, let me finish. It wasn't venom. It was colder, authority wrapped in control. You've run this company as if it were your reflection. Lavish, arrogant, untouchable. You forgot that empires crumble from within long before they fall from the outside. Her assistant placed a small document before each board member. A printed report, stamped confidential, performance audit. The Echelon Group has conducted a full internal review. Decline began exactly 18 months ago, right after your last acquisition attempt. Ryan tried to interrupt, but the chairman spoke first. She's right. The numbers don't lie. A low murmur rippled through the room. Elena smiled faintly. We'll fix this, but first, we need leadership that understands humility. Then she looked directly at him. I'll be assuming full operational control. Ryan will remain on board, for now, as an executive consultant during the transition. Consultant? Ryan spat the word like it burned his tongue. You're demoting me in front of my own board? Elena's voice didn't rise. You did that long before I arrived. I'm just giving it a name. The meeting continued, but Ryan didn't hear most of it. He sat still, eyes fixed on the logo embossed in the wood grain of the table. The same logo he once called his legacy. Now it belonged to her. Every applause that followed Elena's presentation sounded distant, muffled, like he was underwater. Her slides showed growth, recovery, new direction. But all he could see was how confidently she stood there, how every gesture carried certainty. And when she thanked the board, her words were elegant. I look forward to rebuilding what was once lost. To everyone else, it was corporate language. To him, it was poetic vengeance. After the meeting, as the others filed out, Ryan stayed behind. Elena gathered her papers, neatly stacking them. He spoke quietly, voice brittle. You planned this for years, didn't you? She didn't look up. No, I built this for years. Planning revenge is small. Building power is bigger. He took a slow breath, bitterness coating every word. You could have called, talked. We could have... What? she interrupted, looking up at him at last. Pretend everything was fine? Go back to the nights you laughed at my ideas? You said business wasn't for women, Ryan. You said I should stick to charity work. Her tone stayed calm, but her eyes shimmered with something raw, not hate, but memory. I remember, he whispered. I said that. She nodded once. And now charity owns your company. For a split second, Ryan almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was true. He built his throne from arrogance. She reclaimed it with silence. Elena gathered her laptop and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she paused beside him. You know, Ryan, there was a time I wanted you to see me win, to prove I was worth your respect. She looked over her shoulder, eyes steady. But now, I don't need your respect. I own your respect. Then she walked out, heels echoing down the marble hallway, rhythmic, final, victorious. Ryan sat there long after she was gone. The clock ticked above him, steady, cruel. He thought of how he used to joke that she was too soft for the world. Now the world bowed to her. Outside, Elena stepped into the elevator. Her reflection stared back, composed, unreadable. But behind her calm eyes, the storm hadn't fully quieted. This wasn't just revenge. It was reclamation. She had spent years stitching herself back together, and today was proof she wasn't broken anymore. Still, as the elevator doors shut, she exhaled softly. Power didn't erase pain. It just replaced it with purpose. Meanwhile, Ryan drove home that evening, the city lights mocking him like neon reminders of failure. His phone buzzed endlessly, press requests, shareholder questions, internal memos, but he ignored them all. At a red light, he looked up at a massive digital billboard downtown. Echelon Group welcomes Elena Brooks as CEO of Rexford Holdings. Her portrait filled the screen, serene, confident, unstoppable. He stared until the light turned green and still didn't move. The revenge. Ryan didn't drive home immediately. He parked a few blocks away from his office, or what used to be his office, and sat in the dark silence of his car. The engine hummed softly. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Headlights slicing through drizzle, laughter echoing from street corners, the kind of normalcy that didn't care about his downfall. He used to be someone in the city. Now he was a headline waiting to be written. He scrolled through his phone, 24 missed calls. 2 from his assistant, 1 from his father, the rest from reporters. Every notification stabbed a little deeper. Breaking news. Nexora acquires Rexford Holdings. CEO replacement confirmed. His name wasn't even in the title. He lowered the phone and looked at his reflection in the windshield. Same face, same suit. But the man staring back looked older, smaller. He once owned the room. Now even silence owned him. Elena, meanwhile, sat in her new office, the same office Ryan had once called his empire's command center. Everything was as he left it. The oak desk, the framed photos, the whiskey decanter. She didn't remove them. Not yet. Revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about replacement. Her assistant entered quietly. Miss Brooks, the press statement's ready. Would you like to review it before it goes out? Elena nodded, scanning the document. It was straightforward, factual, no malice, just truth. But at the end, she added one line, carefully, before signing her name. Our goal is to rebuild with empathy, innovation, and integrity. Values once forgotten. She handed it back. Send it. The assistant hesitated. Ma'am, may I ask something? Of course. You could have humiliated him publicly, but you didn't. Why? Elena smiled faintly. Because I don't need to destroy him. His own pride already did that. Later that night, Ryan walked into their house, or what had become a mausoleum of their past. The lights were dim. The framed wedding photo still sat on the console table. He picked it up. In the picture, she was laughing, the kind of laugh that came from somewhere pure. He remembered that day, how he teased her about the flower in her hair, how she'd said, "One day, I'll give you something to really smile about." He hadn't realized that smile would be his undoing. He placed the photo face down. Across town, Elena stood on her balcony looking over the skyline. The wind carried the distant hum of the city. Her city now. She held a glass of wine, not in celebration, but in reflection. She thought of the long nights, coding until dawn, building Nexora from a rented office space, sleeping 3 hours a night. Every setback, every moment of doubt, every tear she'd wiped alone. And now, standing here, she realized something deeper. She had won the war, but somewhere she had lost the version of herself who once believed love could survive anything. She got everything she dreamed of, except the person she dreamed beside. The next morning, the media storm exploded. News anchors discussed the acquisition like it was a chess match. Former CEO Ryan Carter replaced by new owner Elena Brooks. Sources confirm Brooks is his wife, operating under her maiden name. A poetic reversal of power. Every channel, every blog, every post, her name everywhere, his name buried beneath hers. Ryan turned on the TV once, then switched it off immediately. It wasn't news anymore. It was noise. He sat on the couch, scrolling through LinkedIn. His profile now flooded with messages of "tough break" and "you'll bounce back." He didn't reply to any of them, because deep down, he knew he wasn't ready to bounce anywhere. At Nexora headquarters, Elena was already planning the restructuring. Meetings, calls, investor dinners. Everywhere she went, people treated her like the symbol of resilience, the woman who turned betrayal into brilliance. She smiled, nodded, led with grace. But when the meetings ended and the doors closed, she sat in the quiet, hands trembling slightly over her laptop. Revenge had been her fuel for years. Now that it was done, she didn't know what to do with all the fire left inside her. She conquered the empire, but victory felt strangely empty. That evening, she received a text. It was from Ryan. "Ryan, we need to talk, just once. No arguments, no press, just us." She stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Elena, tomorrow, 7 p.m., my office." She didn't know why she agreed. Closure? Curiosity? Maybe because a part of her, the part that had loved him before he turned cruel, still wanted to see if there was anything left to say. The next evening, Ryan arrived on time. He looked different, not the confident executive she once knew. His shoulders slumped, his tie loose, his eyes carrying the weight of recognition. She motioned him to sit. He looked around the room. "You kept everything the same." "For now," she said. "It helps people adjust." He smirked faintly. "Still efficient. Still you." For a moment, they sat in silence. The years between them filled the room. Love, resentment, regret, triumph, all tangled into something wordless. Finally, he spoke. "I deserve this," he admitted. "Every piece of it. The jokes, the arrogance, the way I treated you. I thought belittling you made me bigger. Turns out, I was just scared." She listened quietly. No anger, no pity, just understanding that came from distance. He continued, voice softer now. "But you should know something. Despite everything, I'm proud of you." Elena blinked, caught off guard. "Proud?" He nodded. "Yeah, you did what I never could. You built something that'll last. You turned pain into purpose." He came seeking forgiveness, but she'd already forgiven herself. Elena stood, walking to the window. The city glittered below. Her reflection overlapped with his in the glass, two ghosts of what used to be love. She turned back. "Ryan, this wasn't about destroying you. It was about rebuilding me. I hope one day you rebuild yourself too." He smiled faintly, not bitterly, but almost peacefully. "Maybe I will. just not as fast as you." They shared one last look. Not husband and wife, not CEO and employee, just two people who had finally stopped pretending. Then he stood, buttoned his jacket, and left without another word. The door closed. Elena exhaled. The storm, finally, was over. He walked away defeated, and she walked forward, finally free. The elevator doors closed behind Ryan, sealing him off from the only conversation that truly mattered. For a long time, he just stood there, staring at the numbers lighting up one by one, descending toward the lobby. It was over. Not just the marriage, not just the job, the version of himself that used to believe he was untouchable. When the doors opened, flashes of cameras met him instantly, reporters shouting questions. "Mr. Carter, how does it feel to be replaced by your wife? Did you know she was behind Nexora all along? Do you regret underestimating her?" He didn't answer, just pushed through the chaos, ignoring the blinding flashes that caught his hollow eyes. By the time he reached home, the story had already gone viral. His phone buzzed nonstop. Emails from old colleagues, a few cruel memes, one from his mother that simply said, "Pride, my son, is the most expensive thing a man can own." He placed the phone face down and poured himself a drink. The whiskey burned on the way down, but it didn't numb the ache. The laughter he once had, the easy arrogance, was gone. He walked into the study where Elena's old vision board still leaned against the wall. Her goals, her plans, her messy handwriting. He remembered mocking them once. Dream boards are for people who can't afford reality. Now, he touched one. Nexora, empowering workplaces with AI, written in her neat, determined scrawl. The irony hit him like gravity. He whispered into the quiet room, "You were never the dreamer, Elena. You were the doer." Across the city, Elena sat in a dim cafe, alone for the first time in weeks. The media frenzy had made her a symbol of poetic justice. Women wrote to her online, "You gave me hope. You proved we can rise." And yet, somewhere between empowerment and exhaustion, she realized something unsettling. She didn't feel victorious. She felt done. The waitress approached. "Refill?" Elena nodded absently. "Yeah, black, please." She opened her notebook, the same one she'd used in the early days of Nexora, pages filled with sketches, ideas, equations. It used to represent freedom. Now it just reminded her how much she'd sacrificed for it. She had conquered everything outside, but inside, the silence was deafening. Later that week, Nexora's board gathered for a press event. Investors, partners, and journalists filled the sleek hall. Ryan's empty seat was a reminder of ego, failure, and poetic consequence. When Elena stepped up to speak, cameras flashed like fireworks. "Thank you all," she began, her voice steady. "This company was built from resilience, not revenge. It's a story of what happens when you stop waiting for permission and start writing your own narrative." Applause rippled through the hall. But in the back, one reporter raised a hand. "Ms. Brooks, any comment about your former husband's situation?" The question hung heavy in the air. Elena smiled, calm, controlled, unreadable. "I wish him peace," she said simply. Then she stepped off the stage. She didn't give them a quote, she gave them closure. That night, Ryan watched her press conference from his apartment. No bitterness, no resentment, just quiet awe at the woman he had once called a hobby wife. He thought about the night he mocked her in front of friends, how she smiled through humiliation. And now that same woman was leading a company that owned everything he once stood for. The irony wasn't lost on him. He deserved it. All of it. He grabbed a notepad and started writing. Not an apology to her, but a promise to himself. Start again. From zero. No arrogance, no shortcuts. Build something honest. When he put the pen down,
For the first time in years, his hand stopped shaking. Meanwhile, Elena returned home to an empty penthouse. Success looked beautiful from the outside. Glass walls, city view, silent luxury. But inside, it echoed. She walked past unopened boxes and untouched champagne. Her phone buzzed. Message from board. Nexora hits record valuation. She smiled faintly, then placed the phone face down. On her desk sat a framed photo from their wedding day. She didn't remove it. She didn't hide it. She just looked at it and whispered, "Thank you for being the mistake that made me unstoppable." He mocked her beginnings, not knowing he was shaping her legend. Days turned into weeks, the scandal cooled, and the story became a business case study. The wife who bought her husband's company. Universities discussed it, podcasts narrated it. Elena became a symbol, not a person. And in the quiet hours of the night, she often wondered, was revenge worth the loneliness it left behind? But then she'd open her inbox and see hundreds of messages from women starting businesses, quitting toxic jobs, walking away from belittlement, all because of her story. And she'd smile. Maybe the loneliness was just the price of leadership. He lost everything for underestimating her, and she gained the world for believing in herself. The boardroom was still humming with disbelief. The glass walls reflected the stunned faces of executives trying to process what just happened. Some whispered quietly, others sat frozen, because no one dared to look directly at Ryan. He sat there, shoulders heavy, face pale. The man who once carried arrogance like a second skin now looked small. Elena stood at the head of the table, calm, confident, untouched by the storm swirling inside him. Her presence was magnetic. She didn't need to raise her voice. The silence bowed to her authority. "Thank you, everyone," she said evenly. "I'll be reviewing all current operations this week. My goal is simple: stability, accountability, and growth." Her tone was professional, controlled, not a trace of personal venom. That was what made it sting even more. Ryan's mind was screaming, this can't be real. Just months ago, he was mocking her for wasting time on her little startup. He used to joke with colleagues about how Elena played business while he handled the real world. Now, the real world was sitting in front of him, signing documents that would determine his future. He swallowed hard, forcing a smile when the board members congratulated her. Elena nodded politely, eyes passing over him like she acknowledged his existence like one acknowledges a stranger. When the meeting ended, the room emptied quickly. No one wanted to be seen near Ryan. He stayed seated. The pen he once used to sign executive memos now felt like dead weight. Then, her voice. Soft, but firm. "Ryan?" He looked up slowly. She was standing near the window, sunlight catching the edges of her hair. "Congratulations," he said, voice cracking under the pressure of forced civility. "Thank you," she replied, walking toward him. "It wasn't about revenge, you know." He laughed bitterly. Could have fooled me. Elena's expression didn't change. "You fooled yourself." Her words hit harder than anything else could. She continued, steady, precise. "When you mocked me for trying, when you told me I wasn't enough, you weren't breaking me. You were breaking your own reflection. Because the only thing smaller than your faith in me was your belief in yourself." He opened his mouth, but no defense came. There was nothing left to say. Elena leaned closer, her voice quieter now, intimate but cold. "I spent years trying to prove my worth to you, Ryan, but the day you laughed at my dream, that was the day I realized I didn't need your permission to become who I was meant to be." Ryan's eyes dropped. His wedding ring, the one he still wears, glinted under the light. He turned it slowly, as if trying to remember the warmth it once carried.
"You won, Elena," he murmured. "Are you happy now?"
Elena looked out the window. The skyline stretched endlessly before her, a horizon built from everything she once dreamed of. "I'm free," she said softly. "Happiness, that's still a work in progress." She turned back to him. "You'll stay through the transition. You're good at what you do, when your ego isn't leading." Ryan blinked, confused. "You're keeping me?" "Yes," she said simply, "because I'm not you." For a moment his composure cracked. Shame, gratitude, and regret collided in his chest. He looked at her like a man finally seeing the damage he caused. "Elena, Don't," she interrupted gently. "Apologies can't rebuild what arrogance destroys." The room went silent again, the only sound the faint hum of the city outside. Elena gathered her files, adjusted her blazer, and headed for the door. Before leaving, she paused. "You used to sign my allowance," she said without turning around. Now, her voice carried power and grace. "Now I sign your paycheck." And she walked out. Ryan sat there, motionless, surrounded by everything he had built and everything he had lost. The empire he once controlled now belonged to the woman he had underestimated. His phone buzzed. A notification flashed. New company press release. Brooks Industries completes acquisition of Grayson Group. He watched her name, Elena Brooks, fill the headlines. The world finally saw what he never did. Later that night, he returned to the empty apartment, the same one that once echoed with her laughter. Her photos were gone, her scent replaced by silence. He poured himself a drink, staring at his reflection in the glass. For the first time, he didn't see power, he saw loss. And far away, in her new office overlooking the city, Elena posed her laptop. The world celebrated her victory, but her eyes told a quieter story. She wasn't chasing revenge anymore. She was chasing peace. Because revenge ends when justice is served, but healing begins when you forgive yourself for ever needing it. He lost everything for underestimating her, and she deigned the world for believing in herself.
The rain had begun to fall outside the glass tower of Brooks Industries, a soft percussion against the windows that overlooked the sleeping city. Inside, the offices were nearly empty, except for one light still burning on the top floor. Ryan sat there. The man who once filled rooms with swagger now looked smaller than the chair he sat in. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and his reflection in the glass looked like a stranger staring back. Days had passed since that meeting. The takeover had made headlines. The staff whispered her name with reference. Elena Brooks, the woman who turned her husband's mockery into an empire. But for Ryan, the days were a blur of humiliation. He could barely make eye contact with anyone in the corridors. The same employees who once scrambled to impress him now walked past without acknowledgement. And yet, every morning, he still came to work because she let him stay. Not out of mercy, but out of something deeper, something he didn't yet understand. He wasn't fired. That would have been too easy. She wanted him to live every day knowing who was really in charge. It was 9:47 p.m. when the soft sound of heels echoed down the hall. Ryan looked up. She was there. Elena entered with quiet authority, her presence sharper than the scent of rain trailing behind her. She didn't knock. She didn't need to. "Still here?" she asked, setting a folder on his desk. He forced a small smile. "Just catching up. New workload." "I noticed," she said coolly, flipping through a few pages. "You've been assigned to operations. Weekly performance reports due every Friday." He hesitated. "Operations? That's 3 levels down from where I was." "Yes," she said simply. The silence between them was suffocating. Ryan finally exhaled, voice breaking. "Elena, how long are you going to punish me?" She looked at him then, really looked, and for a split second he saw the woman he once knew. But it was gone just as fast. "This isn't punishment, Ryan. This is consequence." He leaned back, defeated. "I made mistakes. I know that. But I always believed in you." Her laugh was soft, humorless. "Believed in me? You laughed at me." "I was scared," he admitted quietly. "You started changing, dreaming bigger. I didn't know where I fit in anymore." "You didn't need to fit in. You just needed to stand beside me." She didn't want to break him. She wanted him to understand what it felt like to be broken by someone you loved. Ryan lowered his gaze. "I was wrong," he whispered.
You built something extraordinary, Alina. You proved everyone wrong, including me. She nodded slightly, but her expression stayed unreadable. Do you think validation means anything to me now? She asked quietly. When I needed your belief, you gave me doubt. Now that I have the world, your approval means nothing. Ryan's voice cracked. Then what do I do? How do I fix this? You don't, she said, standing. You learn from it. Elena turned toward the window, looking out at the skyline she had conquered, the very horizon she used to imagine while sitting in their tiny apartment, dreaming of more. There was a time, she said softly, when I wanted to destroy you, to humiliate you the way you humiliated me. But then I realized something. She turned back to him, her voice firm but calm. The ultimate revenge isn't hate, Ryan. It's success. Because success forces people to live with the truth that they were wrong about you. He once thought he owned her. Now she owned the company that kept him employed. Ryan stood up suddenly, emotion spilling through every word. Alina, I know I can't undo the past, but I don't want to be your enemy anymore. I want to help. I want to be part of what you're building, even if I have to start from the bottom. For the first time, she didn't interrupt. She just listened. Back then, he continued, voice trembling, I used to think being the provider made me powerful. But watching what you built, I realize now you were the strength I pretended to have. Elena's eyes softened just slightly. You finally see me, she said quietly. But now you'll have to see me from where I once stood, below you. Her tone wasn't cruel. It was poetic justice. Ryan nodded slowly. If that's what it takes, I'll earn my place back. Elena tilted her head, studying him. You can't earn forgiveness through work, Ryan. You earn it through change. Forgiveness wasn't a gift she owed him. It was a luxury he'd have to deserve. The next weeks passed quietly. Ryan arrived early, stayed late, and did tasks far beneath his former title. He took orders from junior managers, the same people who used to take orders from him. Every so often, Elena would pass by the operations floor. She never said much, just a nod or a small acknowledgement. But he noticed something. She wasn't cruel. She was fair, firm, unshakable. And for the first time, he admired her not as his wife, but as a leader. One Friday, after submitting his report, Ryan found himself outside her office again. He hesitated, then knocked. Come in, she said. He entered holding a small envelope. It's not business, he said quickly. It's personal. She raised an eyebrow. Go on. He placed it on his desk. It's a resignation letter. I think it's time I move on. Not because I'm angry, because I finally understand. She leaned back, curious. Understand what? That you don't owe me closure. You already gave me a second chance, just not the kind I expected. You showed me what accountability looks like. He smiled faintly. And maybe that's the start of my own redemption. He came seeking forgiveness, but found something far greater. Humility. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she stood and extended him hand. Good luck, Ryan. He hesitated, then shook it. You know, despite everything, I'm proud of you. She smiled. Not warmly, but truthfully. I know. As he turned to leave, she said softly, You mocked me for dreaming too big. Turns out, my dreams were just bigger than you. He paused at the doorway, her words echoing in the quiet. Then he nodded and walked away. Later that night, Elena stood alone in her office. The city lights stretched endlessly, reflections of a life she built from ashes. She opened a drawer. Inside was a photo of them from years ago, the two of them smiling, young, naive. She traced the edge of the frame, then put it face down. The past no longer had power over her. Her phone buzzed, an email from HR. Ryan Grayson, resignation approved, final clearance tomorrow. Elena smiled faintly, closing the screen. She walked to the window, letting the rain cool the glass beneath her hand. Her voice, barely above a whisper. He once thought I was beneath him. Now, I'm the reason he still has a job. The camera would fade there, her silhouette framed against the night skyline. Not as a victim, not as a wife seeking vengeance, but as a woman who turned pain into purpose and walked away stronger than the storm that once tried to drown her. He once thought she was beneath him. Now, I'm the reason he still has a job.